ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
They told me to speak directly into the microphone, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. If it's too loud, take one step back. This is Inevitable Disruption, Avoidable Failure. Today we're going to be talking about some of the ways you can use machine learning and business analytics to detect whether you're being disrupted and then what you should do about it. My name is Christopher Penn. I'm an IBM Champion in the business analytics team. We'll start with a little bit of etymology. To disrupt, it comes from Latin. It means to literally to break away. Out of curiosity, how do people define disruption, particularly digital disruption? What do you guys think it is? Anyone want to shout out an answer? A break in your normal daily work. Okay, anybody else? I'm sorry? A deep transformation. Okay, cool. What else? Well, when we asked the internet, which you generally shouldn't do, it's unhealthy, but when we asked the internet, using Watson Analytics for social media, what digital disruption, digital transformation means, Watson went through about 250,000 articles over the last year and spit out these categories. People think digital transformation and disruption is about technology, data, cloud, innovation, security, analytics, etc. How many of you think that's a reasonably accurate assessment of what digital transformation is? By a show of hands. If you didn't shower today, just raise your hand a little bit. That's fine. Okay, that's fair. And the reason why is that it's missing 2/3 of what we actually classify as transformation. What transformation is three things, right? It is the people who do the thing, it is the process of how they do the thing, and then the technology of what they do the thing with. Now, these three concepts are kind of amorphous, so let's put them together in a way that's somewhat meaningful. When you intersect people and process, what do you get? You get scale. Because if people just kind of did their own thing for fun and had no methodology, you would have absolute chaos. McDonald's would not exist if there was not process, because people would be making burgers all kinds of ways, and that's just a bad thing. When technology and process intersect, what you get is automation, the ability to take a process and make it go faster, make it go more with fewer errors. And finally, when you intersect people and technology, what you get is innovation, the ability for us to have new things. These are what we do for disruption and transformation. We want scale. We want automation. We want innovation. And by the way, the video and the slides for this session will be made available at the end. So just so you know. The consequences, probably don't have to spend a whole lot of time on what the consequences are, because it's pretty straightforward. We lose, right? We have competitors who don't win. We have competitors who win over us. Our customers hate us and leave. We lose money, and then we waste time. Ultimately, it boils down to we get fired. Nobody wants that outcome. So, when we're trying to sell transformation and disruption into the people who sign our paychecks, we have to do it in a very specific way. We can't say, hey, would you like to buy some digital transformation? Yet you will say to me, no, I'm very happy with how things are, right? What instead you will probably need to sell is, would you like to make more money? Is there anybody who would not like to make more money? Right. Would you like to save money? Would you like to save time? Would you like to have new money available so that when your current product or service goes out of fashion, as all things do, you have something to replace it with? These are the ways that you sell into people who you work for the need to have these transformative projects. When we talk about breaking away and breaking things, just because something is broken doesn't mean we can't adapt or change it. So the products and services you have today, you don't have to just fling out the door and start over. You can rebuild them into different ways. So how do we know we are being disrupted? What are the different ways that we would know we're being disrupted? How many of you feel confident that the data you're working with on a daily basis is relatively okay? Not perfect, but good enough to make some decisions with. Okay, that's not a bad place to start. How many of you feel like your data is a complete crap show? Okay, there's a couple hands. The way to figure out disruption is by using 3 different analytical techniques. Anomaly detection, unstructured understanding, and then ultimately predictive analytics. So, these are the three pillars. We need to be able to know when something is odd. We need to be able to make sense of disorder. We need tables. And we need to be able to then, once we know what's happening, why, what are we going to do about it? That's sort of the three pillars of disruption. Let's start with anomaly detection. How do you detect anomalies? The downside of being human, well, there are many downsides of being human, but one of the key downsides of being human is that we are very, very poor at computing at scale. We can maybe hold 10 or so digits in mind. Anybody who's got a phone number longer than 10 digits, you probably can't remember it. However, our good friends in the machines can do this at scale. So one of the most important things to do is to dig into a tool, any analytics tool, Watson Analytics, Cognos Analytics, whatever else you happen to have handy, and have it do assessment. If you know what your key performance indicators are, put every other type of data next to it in a big old table and load it into a tool like Watson Analytics and say, I want to know what drives my KPI. So if you are in charge of revenue, you put your revenue numbers in. I did this for a casino recently. We put the daily slot machine revenue every single day into the machine, and then 86 other dimensions, and said, okay, tell me what combination of variables leads to revenue. And this is something that the computers can do because they're much better at finding those weak linkages. I was working in a healthcare database recently, and that had 30% of it was missing, but we had enough data that we were able to tell the machine, figure out the anomalies, and then fill in the rest, and was able to do that because that's what the machines do. So, figure out your drivers. This is built into almost every stats tool on the planet. SPSS has it, R has it, Python, and of course the prepackaged software. The second step, once you figure out what the anomalies in your data are, what are the things that are unusual or out of place, you have to figure out why those things are occurring. The good and bad of regular business analytics is that we have absolutely no way of understanding why from the data itself. You may know that you had 20% more email opens or 30% more customer returns, but you don't know why, because the data simply is not there in the systems, the structured databases we have. However, we have plenty of sources for this. We have things like social media where people can yell at us on social media. We have traditional media where people can write articles about how much they hate us. We have things like Glassdoor where people can post reviews of how much they hate us, and Yelp and TripAdvisor and all of these different services. For those on the B2B side, there's G2 Crowd and review sites like that where people can leave negative reviews of us. We have all of the data. So if you think back to yesterday when we talk about merging a public and private cloud data, everything here that you want to understand about what's in your private cloud, about your KPIs, is stored in the public cloud because it's all the things that people either love you or hate you for. The only thing you won't find are people who don't care because they won't talk about you in any fashion. If that's the problem, that's not a digital transformation problem, that's a marketing problem. So how do you do that? How do you get that information? There are a whole bunch of tools. Again, open source tools, the programming language R and the programming language Python both have excellent text mining libraries that are no cost. If you have not signed up for Watson Discovery yet, it was announced Sunday. There's a light plan that is $0. You load in a whole bunch of things like TripAdvisor reviews or like G2 Crowd reviews, and it will slice and dice and eventually spit out interesting findings within the text. You can also find this in Watson Explorer. There's a community edition. You can download it, run and install with that. What you're looking for are the words, the phrases, the language people use that describe the service that you're focused on. So if you were to take, for example, your customer service inbox, and I presume that most of us have one, whether or not we read it, and you exported the last 365 days of emails, take that river of hate, put it into a common text format, load it in here, and what you will see are all the common themes, the words, the phrases, the descriptors people use the most to describe your product. So, for example, if your product is a juice box and it leaks, you will find that phrase occurring over and over and over again. Plus, with Discovery in particular, it also provides semantic variation. So product leaks, product broken, product unhappy, product exploded, things like that. All that will help you understand the why of what's happening in your KPIs. If your sales are down, the reason why is probably in all the reviews that people have left you. The third tool or system to use is predictive analytics. Once you know the what and you know the why, you can then start to predict on what's likely to happen next. It can either be the KPIs you already have, or again, it can be public cloud data. One of my favorite sources of public cloud data for marketing and strategy planning is search data, because people type things into Google in particular that they would never say to another human being. And they will type in all kinds of stuff. But that tells you what's on somebody's mind, because nobody types a whole bunch of things like best cloud offering or data virtualization for fun. Nobody does that. Well, almost nobody does that. But not enough people do that for fun. So when someone types something into Google, they're doing it for a reason. They have intent, and that's a great way to calibrate that intent. So I did, let's go switch here to Watson Analytics. I took a look at 6 things that people might type into Google, and I used Watson Analytics plus my own predictive software to forecast the next 52 weeks. The light blue, artificial intelligence; the green, business analytics; the yellow, cybersecurity; the orange, IBM Watson; the lightish, bluish, purple thing, I don't know what color that is, cerulean, Internet of Things; and the darker purple is machine learning. If I am in charge of figuring out how to market machine learning, what weeks of the year do I want to pay attention to? Beginning right here and going all the way through November, the week of November 4th, I had better be marketing the daylights out of machine learning. It better be the topic of every blog post I have. It had better be my social media conversations, my Instagram stories. It all better show that, so I can predict forward, knowing that this is a content gap. This is what the customers are going to do. Now imagine if you did this for, say, I was talking to somebody from Bass Pro this morning. They sell, among many other things, fishing poles. Well, when do fishing poles get sold? There are certain times of the year, and one of the things they totally missed was that there's a huge run-up in interest in early June. I don't know why. I don't fish. I look at fish and I keep walking, but some people like to pull them out of the water and do things with them. Knowing that, what would you do? Would you staff your store differently? Would you staff the returns department differently? Would you project your revenue differently? Would you run different types of social media marketing? Absolutely, you would. So predictive analytics, once you've uncovered what's happening in your data and why, predict it forward, forecast it, and you will know what's likely to happen with a high degree of accuracy. The value of predictive analytics is not predictions. We know when Christmas is, right? We know when New Year's is. We know, in general, that for B2B, there's probably no sense in having a huge campaign here because no one cares. However, having the specificity, knowing what week of the year to focus on, offers us a lot of insight and the ability to make changes to our plans and make good strategies. So those are the analytical tools for disruption, figuring out when we're going to be disrupted. When we map them back to the different outcomes, scale, automation, and innovation, when we need to scale and we need to know why something's happening, that unstructured understanding comes in super handy, because that will tell us things like which processes in our organization are broken. When we need to improve our automation, we would use anomaly detection. Everything from when is this part going to fail to why were there an unusual number of slushies sold yesterday. And finally, if we need innovation, this is where we can do predictive analytics, because knowing when things are going to happen also means knowing when things are not going to happen. When that's the case, we know when we have some downtime, when we can spend time and invest in planning and in stuff that's not necessarily visible. In terms of order, when do you do these things? You start with a question of some kind, like, hey, what happened? You begin with anomaly detection. What in your data has gone wrong? From there, you do your unstructured analysis. Why did those things happen? And then you do your predictive analytics. What happens next? Then you do something with your data. This last step here is really, really, really important. IBM says that about 90% of a corporation's data goes unused. I actually probably believe it's close to 99%, because even though we make PowerPoints out of them, they get put in a desk drawer and nobody ever looks at them again. If you build a predictive forecast and then you put it away and don't look at it until next year, you have effectively negated the reason for doing the forecast in the first place. So please, even if you do these things just a tiny little bit in your organization, do something with it. This is the most important thing to do. If you don't take action on your data and analysis, don't bother doing it. Just go golfing or something. So, we have the tools. We know when we're being disrupted. How do we fix that? How do we not be disrupted? Or how do we, as Chairman Rometty said, how do we become the incumbent disruptors? We fix what's most broken. Right? So if we know that we have a people problem, wow, that's not me. If we know we have a people problem, we fix that first. If we know we have a process problem or a technology problem, we fix those things first. If we fix the wrong thing, we won't get the impact we're looking for. So how do we fix people? I lean towards extermination, but you can't do that in a corporate environment. So if that's not an option, then what you have to do is look at the 4 drivers that make people do stuff broadly. Number 1, people have some kind of value, some kind of foundation that they stand on that is blocking them from making a change. What are the values that they hold dear that might be opposing your ability to make a change in an organization? Number 2, they may lack the skills. This is where training and education, professional development are so important. If you don't have that within your organization, your people are going to be broken. Number 3 is sort of the passion, the connection, that feeling that they're creating something, that they're connected to other people in your organization. One of the biggest obstacles to transformation in larger organizations is a complete disconnection between different groups of people. You have different departments and different silos that I was on a call recently with a large technology company, and people were introducing themselves to each other. I'm like, you all work at the same company. How do you not know each other? Well, it turns out that's actually fairly common. So having that connection, that passion, that willingness to be introduced to people will fix some of the transformation problems. And finally, the motivation. People generally don't like to be evil. Well, 19% of people do, but the other 81% of people generally don't like to be evil. So they need to know that they're working for something, for a higher purpose other than making a bunch of people's money. Right? So what are the motivations? If there's a project of some kind, if there's a resistance to change, it's probably because they don't understand what the motivation is. All 4 of these can be blockers to transformation. All 4 of these can be things that will get you stuck. So when you talk to the people in your organization, especially stakeholders, figure out which one of these is most broken and start working on repairing those things. This is easier said than done. People are really stubborn. In order to make a change, you have to probably hit on all 4 of these, or exterminate them. How do you fix broken processes, the what of things? Like any criminal investigation, all process comes down to 3 things: means, motivation, and opportunity. As an organization, do we have the means to execute a process? Do we have the ability to? If we don't have the ability to execute a process of some kind, then we're not going anywhere. Do we have the motivation, the reason to make a change, the reason to do a process a certain way? How many of you have heard the Easter ham story? Okay, so almost none of you, good. There's an apocryphal story, I have no idea who it's by, of a daughter who was watching her mother preparing a ham for Easter, and she would cut off the ends of the ham, put it in the oven. She asked, why do we do that? Well, Grandma does it. She asked Grandma, why do we do that? She says, well, my mother did that. And she asked the great-grandmother, she said, well, I used to do that because the oven was too small. And so there was no understanding of the motivation, the reason why somebody did something. So when we're talking about process management and improving processes, understanding the reason why those things happen is critical to making changes. If there's a process in your organization that simply doesn't work, it may have worked at one time, and there may be stakeholders who are like, oh yeah, I did that, and I love doing it that way, and we can then have a discussion about whether the metrics matter. And finally, is there an opportunity to make a process change? Most of the time, when you ask somebody, can we make a change? The answer is going to be no, because they're really unhappy with change. However, if there's the right time, or there's a resource constraint, or there's a condition that causes a lot of pain, that's the time to make a change, because the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of changing. However, People are weird. People are adaptable. People will put up with increased levels of pain. So when you have to be aware of when somebody is going to feel an increased amount of pain and get them to make the change then before they settle into, okay, I can live with being punched in the face 5 times a day instead of 4. And finally, addressing the technology. How do we fix the technology part? There are 5 technology pillars of disruption and transformation. These 5 pillars are surprisingly what everybody said they were at the beginning. Analytics, cloud, security, AI, and data. You need all 5. These days, in order to transform an organization and make it function better, or even just a simple pilot project, you kind of need all 5. If you don't have all 5, something horribly wrong is going to happen. How do you do that? How do you figure that out? You run a SWOT analysis on every single one of those 5 pillars in your organization or in your department or even for that project. How strong are we at artificial intelligence? What are our weaknesses there? If you have none, then you have no strengths, but you have a massive weakness. What are the opportunities in the marketplace? Our competitors are not paying attention to AI. And then what are the threats? The threats are Google could invent a push-button service that replaces your entire organization. So go through your organization, all 5 technology pillars, and maybe even individual pieces of each pillar. So when you're talking about cloud, are you talking about cloud storage? Are you talking about cloud virtualization? Are you talking about cloud integration? As you go through every single one of these, map out where you're internally strong or weak, and then externally what's happening. How do you know it's working? If you're embarking on a pilot project of some kind, obviously, you have the KPIs that you set out in the beginning, but if you fix people, scale and innovation should increase. You should see more scale and more innovation in your organization if you fix the people problems. If you fix the process problems, scale and automation should improve. And finally, if you fix technology, automation and innovation should improve. How you measure those things are based on what the outputs, what the outcomes are. So again, if you are trying, for example, the predictive analytics example, if you are just trying to improve your ability to market, you should see greater abilities to run campaigns and have brand new ideas for campaigns. If you are fixing a marketing process that's broken, you should again see that the scale change, but you should also see marketing happen faster and more efficiently with less waste. And if you're facing the same marketing problem, again, the creation of new things and making things go faster and more reliably should occur. Breaking away, the disruption isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? We have to be able to break away from things that don't work anymore. And one of the biggest problems we have as a race, really, is holding on to stuff that doesn't work. Your goal is to take these frameworks and disrupt yourself before somebody else does it. This is a trite, hackneyed cliche, but it is for a reason, because it will happen to you. Every industry I've worked in the last 15 years has been disrupted in some way by analytics, by data, by AI, by already seeing things like IoT and blockchain starting to have impacts on everything from the local library. The library now has IoT, because every time they have those things where they just put the little book on the scanner and then you walk out with your book, and there's no stamping things anymore. If the local library has embraced IoT, then probably you should have too. So, with that, that's the lecture portion of the presentation. We'll take questions. If you would like a copy of the presentation, take a picture of the screen now. Questions, comments, dad jokes. I used to say dirty jokes, but nobody likes that. Sir.
What do you think is the big... You laid this out really intelligently. You showed readily available tools that can be used to do this, but we still have a big adoption problem inside every company I've ever worked for, every client I've ever talked to. What do you think is the biggest bottleneck, whether it's people or mindset or whatever, to getting people to adopt and use these and share these tools? And how do you go about overcoming it?
So the bottlenecks are two things: pain and pleasure. Right? And seriously, so if you can't explain to somebody why you're going to fix their pain, they're not going to do anything. Well, I had a chat yesterday with the VP of Global Sales for Analytics from IBM, and he said IBM doesn't sell technology. He said, we can build a million-blade server and no one will care. IBM sells three things. We help companies make money, we help companies save time, and we help reduce and mitigate risk. And those are the three things that IBM sells, because from a customer perspective, that's all we care about. If I'm a customer, I want IBM or any company to make my life easier, right? To make things suck less, to make the pain go away, right? All of the digital transformation and stuff, all these lovely buzzwords are just about, okay, how do we get people to be in less pain? And so if we can use the tools and stuff. Now, the hard part to your question is identifying what hurts. Generally speaking, there is no AI-based way to do that. There's no analytical-based way to do that. You can say, hey, your numbers are down, your sales are down, but you actually, unfortunately, have to talk to other people. And that's not my favorite thing in the world to do. But that's the way you find out what somebody's pain is. Other questions? I don't work for IBM. I work for a company called Brain Trust Insights. But I am an IBM Champion, which means that I can push the buttons really well in a certain IBM product. Other questions? Comments? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the thing.